Hi, welcome to the iHeartFaces Photography Show. I'm Amy.
And I'm Angie. We're from iHeartFaces.com, where each week we have a photo challenge that must include a face.
We welcome all levels of photographers, from professionals to moms with cameras.
We also have great camera tips, lots of photography tutorials, and all kinds of inspiration.
And we know you spend a lot of money on your photography equipment. So it's time for some one-on-one. Let's make a date with your camera. So you finally took the plunge and you get a fancy camera, you take it out of the box. Ooh, look at all these buttons and doohickeys on there.
It's really overwhelming.
Okay, so were you confused?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good. So I don't
Absolutely.
feel so bad. Okay, so we're making a date with our camera today, which is exciting because Angie's here to tell us all of the important little things that you should know on your camera to take good photos.
There are so many buttons on your camera, it can be very overwhelming. But we're going to break it down to 3 really important things today that you need to learn if you want to learn how to use your camera the most effectively.
Okay, so you're not overwhelmed. Just relax and let her walk you through it. So let's get out our cameras.
Okay, first things first, let's turn the camera on.
Turn your camera on would be good.
That was easy. See, we're piling straight ahead.
Yeah.
Then let's notice over here on the dial. You'll notice most cameras are immediately set on that green box.
Okay.
And that means you're in automatic mode. You're letting your camera choose every setting for your photo. You're giving it no input.
And you don't want to do that?
No, not usually. Your camera usually can make mistakes too.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to get a little advanced right now, and we're going to move up to AV mode.
All right.
If you're on a Canon. If you're on a Nikon, it would be an A.
Okay.
And that stands for Aperture Priority Mode.
And what is that? What's aperture priority?
Okay, aperture is talking about the size of the opening in your lens.
Okay.
That's all it is how much light your lens is letting in.
Okay.
So if you have a very, very small opening in your lens, you're going to get very little light.
Yeah.
If the opening is very large, tons of light coming in. Okay.
All right.
So let's look over here now and see how we would change our aperture now that we know how that is there.
Uh-huh.
So right now we have a 1.4 on this lens. That actually lets in a ton of light, which is really confusing for people.
But why is it so confusing?
Because you would think that if I moved my aperture up to, say, let's go up to like a 13.
Okay.
It's a big number.
Okay.
You'd think it's letting in a lot of light, and it's actually the opposite, which is really confusing.
Okay.
So the big numbers for aperture let in very little light.
Okay, got it.
If you go back down to what seems like a smaller number, the 1.6, you're going to have tons of light coming into your camera.
Okay, okay. And you shoot in AV mode, and you like it a lot.
I love AV mode.
Okay, so why do you like it so much?
AV mode, well, and you can do it in manual too, but AV mode is the easy way to start.
Okay.
Everybody, when they first start photography, they want to get that beautiful blurry background. Remember that when you first started out and you just, how do you get that blurry? It's all about aperture.
Okay.
So if you're using that really small number, which is actually the lens is wide open because you're letting in so much light, then you're going to get lots of great blur in the background.
Okay. So, but that's why would you want a large number again? Did you
Larger
just tell me
number
that?
is when, if you're at the 1.4, you're letting in a lot of light, but very little is going to be in focus.
Okay.
So if I have your whole family and I'm photographing you, it's only going to focus on your nose.
Oh, well, I don't want that.
If I want to get your whole family in focus, I'll probably need to move up to maybe a 5.
All right.
And then all of you are going to be nicely in focus.
Okay.
But not as much light will be let into my camera.
Okay.
Okay?
Now, are we done talking? Because I want to see some samples.
Let's see
Okay,
some.
let's see some samples of aperture. Okay, so now that we've learned about aperture, what's another important setting that we should know?
Okay, we're going to move on to the second really important thing, and that's shutter speed.
Great.
When you're talking about aperture, which we were doing in AV mode, you're talking about how quickly it opens up in your lens. Now we're going to talk about the shutter that's actually inside your camera and how fast it's open or how slow it's open. Okay, so we were on AV mode here. We're going to move to TV mode, which stands for shutter priority, or on a Nikon camera it'd be S. It would be the same thing.
Okay.
And now we will not be able to pick the aperture at all, but we will be able to set our shutter, the shutter speed.
The shutter speed.
So you can see right here that number that we were using for the aperture is gone, but now our shutter speed is showing up right here, and right now it's an 80.
Okay.
So that's a slower shutter speed. We can move the shutter speed up really, really fast to like 1/8,000th of a second. That's a really fast shutter speed.
Can you show me like how it sounds?
Absolutely, it's really cool.
Okay.
All right, so if we're on a fast shutter speed, I'm just gonna click it. Super fast. You can barely even hear it open and close. Okay. Now I'm gonna move way down. We're gonna go all the way down to really slow. And I'm gonna click it. So you can kind of think of a window with shutters on it. If the shutter's open really big, you're letting in a lot of light.
Oh, that's cool.
If it's open really small for a very short amount of time, or a small shutter, you're not letting in as much light.
Okay, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. Well, when do you want to use a slower shutter speed versus a faster shutter speed?
Okay, if you are working with children, you know, we have tons of kids running around our house. They're super fast, they're crazy, wild. You're gonna have to use a faster shutter speed to be able to capture them, or else you're gonna have a lot of blur.
Okay, so AKA action shots.
There you go.
Want to have a high one.
Have a faster one.
Got it.
If you're using a slower shutter speed, actually, if you're like, if I'm only photographing you and you're a really good model for me and you'll just sit there, I can use a little bit of a slower shutter speed because I can just take the photo and you're going to sit there for me. You're awesome.
Or what about water? That's a good
Water's
example.
a good one too. A lot of people like to capture that flowing water, which is so pretty and it actually looks like it's moving. Your shutter speed is going to have to be open a long time to capture that, and you're actually going to have to use a tripod or else it'll be all blurry.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. That makes sense to me.
Well, we've talked about aperture.
Right.
We've talked about shutter speed. Now we're going to talk about 1/3 really important element of bringing light into your camera.
Okay.
So if you're over here on this part of your camera, you'll notice a button that says ISO.
Okay.
So you're going to push on that, and then you'll see a number down here. Right now mine says 250. So if I was using a low ISO of 100, that's where typically you would want to use. Or you can move up to much higher ISOs, and what it's doing is those higher ISOs are letting a lot more light into your camera. The downside, though, is that they're letting a lot of grain into your photos as well.
Right.
So that's why if it's at all possible, I try and keep my ISO as low as I possibly can have it be, which is usually 100.
Okay. Oh, that's just like in the olden days when you got actual film on your camera, and so on the sunny days you got 100 or 200.
Yep.
And lighter, you know, darker days, it went up to what, 800?
800, 1,000.
Okay, so that's the same thing, just like the old days with the film.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So in a quick review, we talked about getting out of the green box, and we moved on to aperture priority mode, which was AV, which let us change our aperture but not our shutter. Then we moved on to shutter priority mode, which let us change our shutter but not our aperture. And now guess what, everyone? You're ready to move on to manual.
The big daddy.
You know,
the scary one.
Aperture, you know, shutter speed, you know, ISO. You're more than ready to start trying to shoot in manual.
We're ready. Well, thank you for joining the I Heart Faces Photography Show. We hope you had fun on your date. I know I did.
Oh, yeah.
You're a great date. Well, join us again for more great camera tips.